So, good morning, everyone. Thank you to be here. It's a great pleasure for me. It's my first time in South Africa. It's also our first time we're presenting the index in South Africa. And I really want to thank Free Market Foundation, Temba, Jason, Leon, all the staff for making this possible. They have been working with us in the last since the first edition of the index. I want to start with this very small background. Property Right Alliance was founded in 2005 with the main goal to start publishing the International Property Right Index. We manage the Hernando de Soto Fellowship, so in this way we are able to work with the Professor Sari Levi-Carsiente. And also we organize international policy conference, international coalition letter, and when it's possible, we also help other friends of us to establish a think tank that are willing to work on defending and protecting property right, intellectual property right all over the world, as we have done in India, in Ukraine, in Ireland, and now we are working with our partner in Colombia as well. We like to start always with the basic message. Property rights are human rights, as are written in the Article 27 and 17 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I like to quote Article 17, for example: everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others. And no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. And this is the message that we try to deliver every year with every new publication. And I also would like to spend a couple of minutes with a couple of slides on why property rights are important. Are important because without property rights, we don't have competition. And also because property rights are the rules of the road in a market economy. So and there are three main points that I would like to highlight: the right to choose the use of resource, the right to the service of the resource, and the right to exchange the resources. So with the lack of property right, we have less freedom, more socialism, equal more poverty. There are different economists that we always like to quote. One of these is Friedrich von Hayek, and he said the system of property right is the most important guarantee of freedom, not only for those who own property, but scarcely less for those who do not. And this is an important message, especially if you want to get rid of poverty. Always Thomas Sowell, another libertarian economist, he said both free speech rights and property rights belong legally to individuals, but their role, their real function is social function, to benefit vast number of people who do not themselves exercise this right. And here, the new edition of the index. There are three main questions behind the index. What would the world be like without property rights? And we know the answer. Soviet Union was a perfect example in the history, but also we have Venezuela, we have other countries that keep failing the same mistake. Or how would a company or startup defend its own trademark, copyright, without consolidating intellectual property right system? Or how would a country build and strengthen their property right system and improve the free market economy without a fair, transparent, legal, and political environment? So with the index, we try to answer to these three basic questions. We always host, every year we are honored to host the introduction by Hernando de Soto, where we aspire our index basically from his studies, especially why property rights are important to economic growth and to create more economic freedom, and so reducing poverty. Just a quick overview. The first edition was published in 2007. Since 2015, we have been working with the Professor Sari Levi-Carsiente, one of the top economists in Venezuela and also in South America. And we measure always the legal and political environment, physical property right, intellectual property right. So three main elements has been analyzed in our index. We have had the pleasure and honor to work with more than 113 think tanks all over the world, covering 72 countries. And every year we publish at least 6 case studies. This year we have a case study on South Africa, prepared by Free Market Foundation, on Ukraine, Malaysia, Nepal, Japan, and we started this year for the first time a special case study about property right and how property right has been studied by a specific economic school. In this year, we start with the Austrian Economic School. And this year we analyzed 125 countries. So this is a profile of Professor Flavia Carcente. So she's a member of the academic board of CEDICE, is the biggest free market think tank in Venezuela, one of the most influential in South America. She's also former dean of the economic department of the Central University of Venezuela, and also senior fellow at the Boston University. So, and we are very pleased and honored to work with her since 2015. And here, the network of our organization. So we have a think tank from Afghanistan, from Ghana, Free Market Foundation of South Africa has been with us since ever, and of course, a lot of think tank in South America, in Southeast Asia, in Europe, and some of them in Central Asia. And few of them in Africa, Ghana, Free Market Foundation, in South Africa, and also Morocco and Egypt. And hopefully more in the future. Just a quick note about the methodology. So is a simple average among the equal component of the legal political environment, physical property right, intellectual property right. The scale goes from 0 to 10, where 0, of course, is the worst performing country and 10 is the best one. We collect data, so we don't produce data, we collect data from World Economic Forum, IMF, World Bank, and also the Special 301 report by USTR, and also OECD. As I mentioned before, this is the list of the case studies from Ukraine in terms of trading ban on land, or the land reform in Nepal, the digital piracy in Malaysia, of course, the property right reform in Japan, and also the pursuing property title for low-income household in South Africa. This is also a case study that will be presented this morning. And as I mentioned before, the last one is the property right from the economic point of view. And here is the list of magazine or international organization that are using our index. Forbes, for example, every year they use our index for their own index, the best country for business, and also and so on, Economist, Financial Times, World Bank, USTR, and National Geographic for what concerns gender equality. Here is some example of international activity of a Property Right Alliance for what concerns intellectual property right. I would like to start just saying why IP are important. And just to give you a couple of data, IP in tax industry employ 30% of the US workforce and 38% of the workforce in the European Union, representing more than 127 million jobs. Or these jobs generated 40% of the GDP in both economy, and the pay wage is 46 times higher than comparable jobs in other sectors. So this is important data that explain why IP are tied to economic growth. And I want to mention an example of a plain packaging. One of the, we think, a very bad policy on IP, attacking IP, that's been implemented in Australia in 2012, and it is not working at all. The main goal was to reduce the smoking rate, but is failing completely. And we are against, not because we need to defend a specific product, but because it is a direct attack to the trademark. So, and if you consider trademark is a brand identity for any type of product, for any type of company, the small one to the big one. For example, and also it's very easy to counterfeit this type of product. We are not talking about only cigarettes, but we are talking about wine, sugar drink, junky food. For example, in France, the Minister of Health, after more than 1 year, they have to admit that the plain packaging is not working. In France, they were also thinking to implement plain packaging, for example, for wine. And the former President Sarkozy had to speak loudly to say, well, let's avoid that. Let's avoid, because plain packaging was going to destroy the wine industry. The same is going to happen in other world where wine producers, like South Africa, for example, since they are considering also plain packaging. And I think tomorrow is the deadline for the submission of a comment on a plain packaging proposal. So this is an example that is not working, but is driven by an ideological approach against the trademark intellectual property right. And this is the way we work usually. This is the second global coalition letter we ran in the last 2 years. This year we are able to collect for the first time 62 international organizations. I'm very grateful to Free Market Foundation to support our letter. And we addressed this letter to the new director of WHO, asking to stop this type of detrimental policy on IP. If we want to fight smoking, let's do campaign wherever they want, but not attacking intellectual property rights. Here another example was a very interesting by an article that Jason Urbach and Philip Stevens from Geneva Network, they published regarding one of the new policies that has been discussed in South Africa on IP. And for example, where the Minister of Health, in order to make the drug cheaper, they want to pursue compulsory license or make patent more flexible. And this is a way that it will affect in the long term also the IP protection in South Africa. And in this article, it's very interesting because they say South Africa should follow the path of China, where they perfectly understand that the only way to deliver more cheap drugs to the people is just investing on innovation. Here is our letter, for example, another example. We address on the World IP Day, April 26, to Dr. Francis Gary, the director of WIPO. We focus our letter on the IP innovation and women, since the title of the World IP Day was focused on women, but also we restate the importance of IP and innovation in order to create more justice and economic growth. Here, a couple examples about our digital campaign against plain packaging and pro-innovation, pro-IP, and against counterfeit product. And here I want just to conclude my presentation that since March 2018, we are very honored that we signed an agreement with American University, Professor Park, and the Property Right Alliance will be co-authoring the new patent index and also the trademark index. So in this edition of the International Property Right Index, we are the first one ever to use the new Dayton Patent Index, because we collaborate to update the new index. And with this slide, I conclude my presentation. This is my contact. Feel free to send me email. We are always happy to share for free the data behind the index. And with this, please follow us in Twitter, PR Alliance. And I leave the floor to Themba, and after for finally the key finding of the new index. Thank you so much.